I'm the guy who calls my daughter to fix stuff. It's crazy. Although I paid her this weekend. She's married, has 2 kids, and I said to her, Kathy and I. So I'm here. Kathy's coming on Friday. We're going to spend 2 days here in Kauai, and then we're going to Maui for the week with all of our family. The whole family's coming out. So we wanted to get Christmas a little bit going because we've got some people from Guatemala coming for a week in the middle of it, which is hard. I mean, we love them, but it's hard to do Christmas. And so I said to my daughter, I'll buy you and Steve dinner in Maui if you guys will put the lights up for me while I'm gone. And so I just decided to put the lights up, and then my daughter Christy, not Steve would not do this, but my daughter Christy goes, okay, we made reservations at Merriman's, which is the most expensive restaurant in Maui. It's the most expensive restaurant here in Kauai. And I was like, I was thinking like Taco Bell, but I'm now stuck. So anyway, I don't know what happened. Okay, now I feel better. Okay, now that I know. Okay, so this idea of positive adaptability is critical. And it's good for kind of wherever you go. But like I said, I'm going to talk about communication. And do you know what eHarmony.com is? Anybody in here? Okay, some of you will use eHarmony. Do you know that about half of you will get married to someone that you met online? That's the statistic right now. Is that random?
Yeah.
So it changed kind of during COVID. It was like 1 out of 6, and then it was 1 out of 5, and now it's like almost 1 out of 2. People meet their spouses online, which is crazy. So I did some consulting for this eHarmony.com. I don't know if you've ever seen it on TV, but there's they'll talk about you can meet your mate and all this stuff. The guy who started eHarmony, his name is Neil Clark Warren. He's a marriage expert and he's a relationship expert, and he's a mentor for me. We're going to talk about mentoring in the afternoon, and we'll talk about you and mentoring. And but anyway, he's a mentor to me. And I said one time I was talking about how Kathy and I communicate. And he was almost frustrated with me. And he goes, Jim, communication is a learned trait. And that rocked my life because what I realized was I can learn to have positivity and adaptability. And it's a learned trait. So I started looking at key ingredients to relationships. What I do, I'm not like the world's greatest expert, but I study relationships. So you can talk to me about a relationship that you're in, and I can probably go, oh, it's not good, that's good, that's good. Because it's what I study. It's like some people study math, some people are artists. I'm a relationship person. And what's fascinating about it is when I started studying what does a healthy relationship look like, 2 words rose above the rest. You want to hear this. You know what they are? Positive adaptability. If you have a positivity towards somebody, or if you promote positivity toward them, and if you are adaptable, so meaning you're a more flexible person. Now, some of you are like super flexible, some of you aren't. And so you might have to work at it harder, but that's the answer, positive adaptability. So be adaptable. Leaders who are flexible, and I'm just assuming you're going to be leaders because you came to this thing. Leaders who are flexible are happy and they're better leaders. Okay. Now, Kathy and I are very different, so we had to really learn in terms of even our own relationship stuff. So Kathy is a person who is an introvert. How many introverts do we have in here? Okay. You know what? We had like almost all in. I didn't even talk on this last year, but we had more introverts last year because I could tell the noise level down below. When I walk in, I'm like, these people are tired. How many of you are extroverts? How many are like you're not sure? Or you kind of okay? Because they're yeah. So Kathy's an introvert. So that means she would be, if she was here and hanging out with you, there would be like 3 of you would say, I had the most significant conversation with Kathy. She changed my life because that's who she is. But she's not going to say even hello to everybody. Not because she's bad relationally, she's just, or rude. She just is like an introvert. So she doesn't think you want to know her, so she's not going to do that, right? So at a party, she'll sit in a couch, she'll talk to somebody, they'll come back and tell me, my life was changed because of the 45 minutes I spent with Kathy. For me, on the other hand, I'm going to have a shallow conversation with everybody as an extrovert, right? And I'm not going to have, that's just me. Okay, so that's who I am. I had to learn to embrace that. So my flexibility is, her introversion, which I was attracted to when we met the first day of college. So at your age, we met the very first day. It would have been the first day at, Anchor House for some of you, right out of high school. We met, and I was sitting in the nerd section back where the 4 of you are. was the nerd section. And she was sitting in the second row, and I said to my new nerd friends, because I didn't know anybody, I said, see that girl down there? I'm going to take her out on a date. And they looked at her beauty, and they looked at me, and they, right, that was like really fast. You said that way too fast. There you go. So they laughed. So I immediately, the next day I have her in class, and I put my hand out, and I go, hi, I'm Jim. And she's like, whoa. And she told me her name, and then she got a boyfriend.
Was it you?
No, it wasn't me. He was like tall. He was literally, he was like a senior in college, and he was tall, dark, and handsome. And this is what you're looking at, right? And so we became just friends. And anyway, she would always ask him, like, I don't know. His name was Bruce. I don't know if I should keep dating Bruce, and what do you think? And I'd always go, break up with the scum. There's somebody better. So anyway, she finally broke up with the scum. I thought she was going to come running into my arms. No. But we were best friends. It was actually really good for a relationship because we became best friends without ever having any of the romance or we dated, meaning what you have inclusive dating and exclusive dating. And ours was inclusive because it was like, it really wasn't a date. It'd be like you guys. You go down surfing and there's some girls and guys together, and that's kind of like a date because you're hanging out with the opposite sex, but it's not really a date like you think of going to a romantic dinner with candlelight and all that kind of stuff. And but I have no idea why I'm talking. So I was attracted to her introversion because she would listen to all my jokes and whatever. Once we got married, her introversion that began to bug me. Because I was working in a church, and in the church you got to know everybody, and she's like, no, I'm good. I don't need to go to that. That was just her. I now love her introversion because I love how deep she is. We would look at a Compassion International or World Vision commercial, and I'd be like, that kid has orange hair, and his stomach's all bloated out. And she's like, that's because he's dying of hunger. And then she cries, and I'm like, that's cool, orange hair. It's kind of like, what your hair is. It's kind of like, not that your hair is orange, but, well, that can happen from malnutrition, not that you're malnourished, because you have, what kind of kielbasa do you have? What kind of kielbasa was brought to you? So you're going to eat that moose? The poor moose.
We look for it.
That moose. Are you going to share that? Oh my God. I have some bakery. My friend from here went to a bakery yesterday and bought some bakery items and said, pass them out to you guys, and I forgot, so I'll bring them at the afternoon. But anyway, so again, opposites. We had to learn to embrace that. Detailed. She's detailed. I'm not detailed. So that was a hassle. And I had to learn to be adaptable. Okay. So we'll talk about detail. So when we first got married, so we were 21 when we got married. I do not suggest. I wrote a book called Getting Ready for Marriage. And people use it. 40,000 people right now are using it for engagement things. And I would never tell anybody to get married as young as we did, but we did. So one of our first fights, Kathy works with people who have autism. She's a specialist in that, and she's really good. She was working at a state hospital in California, in Pomona. My man, Pomona, right? Didn't you say you live in Pomona?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's so funny talking to you guys because I'm having to move you around. But anyway, she would get up at 5:30 and go to work early. And this is about 1 at night. And we were living in a studio apartment in Yorba Linda, not too far from where you live. And it's like 1, and I'm in bed and she's not. And she's at the kitchen table and she's going like this. And I'm not really sharp with guy-girl relationships at that point. Probably not still, but I know when she's doing that's not a good noise. It's not a good noise. Something is wrong. So I wake up and I go, Kathy, I was kind of frustrated. Kathy, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm trying to balance the checkbook. Now, none of you have a checkbook, I realize, but a checkbook is what your parents use to pay bills. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So she's trying to balance it, and it's not good. Well, I'm a youth pastor. I'm not making any money, and she wasn't making that much money. And so I go, whoa, are we in trouble? And she goes, well, I'm in trouble because I've been doing this for like 2 hours and I can't find how much money on the balancing the checkbook. So I get up because because I'm like now freaked out, going, we probably are in debt, and the bank's going to come and get us, and they're going to, shoot me. And so I go, how much are we in debt? Now I'm right by her. She's at the kitchen table, and she goes, $1.31. I go, that's all? So for 2 hours, you've been freaked out about $1.31. Like I would round the money up and just go on, not even thinking about it. And she goes, yeah, I can't find it. So I do what any loving husband would do. I went into the bedroom, I pulled a dollar bill out of my pocket and 31 cents, and I slammed it on the kitchen table and said, here's your $1.31. How do you think that went? Not good, not good. First time I ever slept on the couch as a married person, not the last. But the first time I slept on the couch, because we just had this like, we hadn't really, like now we don't really have those blowouts, but we had this blowout over $1.31. What I had to understand was that I needed to be more flexible with her. I actually have a point to this. That I need to be more flexible because that was important to her. It wasn't important to me. So being flexible, sometimes that's what you do. Yeah.
So what would it look like now if you went back and did it again?
Say it again.
What would you do now if you went back?
Now I go, oh man, Kathy, that's a bummer. Why don't you go come to bed? You got to get up at 5:30, and we can work this thing out later. Is there anything I can do for you? And she's not going to tell me to help balance a checkbook because she knows I barely know how to do math. But I would now not cause a fight over $1.31. I offended her. She had just spent 2 hours doing it. So now I'm getting her shoes, and I would go, I'm a jerk. Because I downplayed it by doing the $1.31. I still agree that I was right and she was wrong. Anybody who's like a detailed person would go, well, I'm on her side. Anybody who's a non-detailed person would go, she's an idiot. I'm still thinking she kind of is, to be honest about that. But I would do it differently, because the question you have to ask in relationships is, do you want to be right or do you want to get along? So sometimes you have to swallow your deal and not always be right, or we get all defensive in relationships. You do this with your parents, or you do it with a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it might be. See? So with Kathy, I would have done it totally different. By the way, that is a great question. Yeah.
At what point is it like, if the other person is just like too rigid and you're like too flexible, is it like an uneven like power dynamic where like you can be like pushed over if not one's flexible?
Yeah. Well, it's better in a relationship when both are willing to kind of negotiate that. But if you're the flexible one and they're the rigid one, sometimes you have to understand why they're rigid. I have to understand why Kathy's rigid when it comes to, the checkbook thing. That was rigid. That was, I just have to understand that that's an important thing to her. So now, all these years later, guess what? When we go to the tax guy once a year to get our taxes done, he goes, "You guys are amazing." And I'm like, bring it on. I do none of it. She does it all. So even in the relationship, some of your dads ran the money, not in this family. Kathy runs the money because she's a heck of a lot better than me. See, so you begin to, adapt, if you would. So that's actually also a great question. So, one other story with Kathy. So, like, Kathy, and this is just the opposite of what a detailed person should do. But when growing up, she, her toothpaste tube, she squeezed it from the middle, and so, instead of like rolling it as Jesus would do, may I add? So I roll it, and she squeezed it through the middle, and honestly, we would be like bucked at each other. I'm like, Kathy, why do you do that? She's going, because I've always done it that way. You need to roll it. It would never be rolled, so guess what we did? We got separate toothpaste tubes. Mika, good job. Okay, so your name and that answer, right now you're the teacher's pet, but we're just, because you're named after my dog, but that's another story. But you see what I'm saying? So here's the point, and this is kind of the answer. Okay, so the point is this. If you're practicing this, you got to go, does it really matter? Some of you get too hyped over something, and you just got to go, does it really matter? Does it really matter how Kathy does her toothpaste tube? Seriously, I'm going to be bugged at her because of a toothpaste tube? But it's the same with anything. It's you got to ask that question, does it really matter? So I walk out sometimes doing it. Now, Winston Churchill, another great quote, says you will never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks. And there are people who are in this room who will struggle with leadership or struggle with relationship because you're throwing stones at every dog that barks, when it's really not that important. So you got to ask going back to that other question, does it really matter? See? And then positivity is another thing. So naturally, some of you are more positive, some of you are more, like say, melancholy or more negative, okay? So, I mean, again, we're all family here. How many of you would say that on a scale, you're going to have three choices? You're kind of positive, you're in the middle, or you can tend to be, you can lean toward negative. I'm not going to burn on negative people either. I'm just going to tell, I have answers for you. So how many of you would say positive? Okay, a lot of you. How many of you would say you're in the middle? Okay, how many would say you're more negative at times? You think more negative? Okay, so the point being is that even those who went, I'm positive, people around you might say you're more negative. We tend to be more negative. We tend to lean in that direction. So this is harder for the people who can go negative or melancholy. By the way, that's not a bad trait. It's just simply how we are. But we want to be more positive when it comes to relationships. So positivity is the twin sibling to adaptability. Positivity is the emotional climate in a relationship. Okay? So if you're the positive person, then the emotional climate is going to be a little better. If you're positive toward that person, you're positive toward your parents, you're positive toward a boyfriend or girlfriend, you're positive toward whatever, that's going to be the emotional climate that you're going to lead with. If it's negative, and you can still be a positive person, still have a negative relationship, of course, it's not going to go as well. So I want to teach you something that is, this is like the thing for today. It's called the magic ratio. So a guy named John Gottman, who actually isn't a Christian, but he studies relationships. He's at the University of Washington. He says that the magic ratio is 5 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction. That's the best in terms of relationships. If you guys could learn that today, you go, okay, I'm in this relationship, but we're going a lot more negative. So it's harder for the negative people or the people who say they're in the middle. But also positive you can be passive aggressive positive too. So because quite a few of you put your hands up. Some of you are positive because you're passive aggressive. Okay. So again, that's the magic ratio. If you go 1 to 1, 1 positive, 1 negative, the relationship is almost dead. So negativity kills relationships. The Bible says, do all things without grumbling and complaining. It's a great scripture. We don't talk enough about that because, I'm not just talking about grumbling and complaining about something that you've been offended by. I'm saying if it's, raining today, that, if it's all about negative, you're being negative, it's self-talk and it's going to be negative. Yeah, guess what? The sun's going to come back out and you're in Kauai, so it's going to rain. Okay, so that's, like my friend who lives on the north side, who came down today, or yesterday with me, he was sending photos because his wife, it was raining like crazy in Princeville where they live, and his wife was, bummed about that. She's not a grumbler and complainer at all, but negativity can kill a relationship. So, negativity can kill a relationship really, really quick, and, that's where you go. Now, so the next lesson is that I learned, or that I wrote down anyway, is what I'm going to call find replenishing relationships. And I already talked about it, right? So this thing, and again, for some reason the deal doesn't. I don't know why it's not working, but number 1, replenishing relationships. It's really easy for us to have negative relationships. But let me ask you a question, and I'm going to spend the whole afternoon talking about this. But do you have life mentors? How many of you could say that you have some mentors in your life? Put your hands up. A lot of you. Awesome. Awesome. We're going to talk. I want to know even who those mentors are. You have a question?
Or number 7?
Number 7 is find replenishing relationships. It's when I showed you the diagram earlier, Jesus had replenishing relationships with his disciples. So find life mentors, find spiritual mentors, find your work mentors. When you get married, find marriage mentors, parenting mentors, things like that. There are 2 types of people that come to you. Number 1 are what I call VDPs. VDPs, very draining people. And you all have it. How many of you have it? When I said very draining people, you know somebody. I mean, it could be a sibling, it could be a cousin, it could be somebody. How many know a very draining person? Okay? Yeah, if you don't, you're amazing. They will show up in your life. But the ones that we want are VIPs, very inspiring people. And we've got to lean into finding those kind of very inspiring people, the VIPs, okay? And so one of the things you want to be thinking about, even as you go back, and I realize this is kind of early in the game because you're not leaving until, when do you guys leave, May? So yeah, Christmas break, so some of you go back then. But really, when this thing is done, you start going, who are going to be some people who can mentor me? So I've been in a small group for 22 years with 5 men. And they're peer relationships, but they're also kind of mentors to me. And so I'm a better husband, father, a better Christ follower because of those men. And we meet every week. And it's awesome. They're just awesome people. I'm so fortunate to have them. See? And so, again, I've had to lean into it. So, like, we have a couple. I've told him that it's costing me thousands of dollars. So, he does stuff with his whole family. And he has more money than we do. So, he can afford, like, amazing trips with his family. So, I can fly, because I fly a lot. So, I'm bringing 9 members of our family, plus me and Kathy, to Maui this week, next week, so we'll be in Maui all week. And I'm doing it on, one way it's $5.60, round trip it's $11.20 because of frequent flyer, right? But we're also going to have meals, and we're going to do all this stuff. My daughter Heidi cracks me up. She sends a thing to the family. Everybody has a family deal, what do you call it, family thread. And she goes, here's where we're eating on Sunday, here's where we're eating on Monday, here's where we're eating on Tuesday, Thanksgiving we're going to have a barbecue, Friday mom and dad are going to watch the grandkids while we all go out, which cracks me up because she never asked, right? That's the youngest, they don't have to ask. And Kathy and I are like, awesome, but it was funny that we're she just assumed we'll take the grandkids, which we will, it'll be a great time. But they already have it planned out, so that it is going to cost a bunch of money. But Terry, he's older than me, and I've watched him with his adult children, and he's a star. And so Kathy and I meet about 4 times or 5 times a year with Terry and Sharon. We just ask them questions like, how do you do parenting? What do you guys do for family now? What do you do? They have grandkids, we have grandkids. What do you do with the grandkids? What, all these things. I learned so much from, they used to have a bracelet that said, what would Jesus do? I do, what would Terry and Sharon do? I want to do what Jesus does too. But you see what I'm saying? You find mentors, okay? And we'll talk more about that. But they are the replenishing relationships, okay? So now, it's funny, I'm going to do a little bit of a switcheroo because I have a thing on mentoring, and so the only way I can do this is just kind of, you're going to see all these again. I just got to push through them. This is going to happen later. So with this, accountability, the next lesson, because I'm coming back to replenishing relationships, and I'm going to ask you some questions here in a minute. Accountability is key. Accountability is just absolutely key. So if you want to be a key leader, if you want to be a good Christ follower, if you want to be a person who does well in your life and family and all that kind of stuff, accountability, you got to have accountable relationships. So accountability is key. This is so bummed because I don't think these are going to come on. So you're going to have to write if you care for this. I'm going to give you a bunch of accountability type questions. Okay. So in my life, there was a guy who was actually the president of Zeus Pacific University, and we were accountability partners for 40 years, and I say we were because he died. And that was like losing, a family member. So for 40 years, we had an accountability relationship, and we asked these questions. Now, they're not going to come up on the screen, unfortunately, but the questions are these. We would walk around this lake. We would actually meet in a place called Brea, because I live in one part of Orange County, he lived in LA County, and we would meet at this lake. And here's some of the questions that we ask. And what I'm suggesting to you is that you find someone in your life to do these with. One is it working? Is life working? So we always start with that, like, how's life going? It's supposed to work. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Am I focused on the right stuff? Second question, am I focused on the right stuff? What do I need to do to sustain my life and my faith and my health and my ministry and my family? How am I doing? What's holding me back? Is my character committed to Christ? Yeah.
Maybe how am I doing? What's holding me back? That question.
Yeah. How am I doing? What's holding me back? What's holding me back from doing my goals? Am I living a life of integrity? is my pace of life sustainable? Guys like me and him, who's the president of a university, we're busy. And so is the pace that we're going at, is that sustainable or is it not sustainable? Here was one that was really interesting with that. And we would ask these questions every time. We meet about every 6 weeks. So this wasn't a weekly thing like I'm in with this other one. But here was the question. Is my heart for God growing or shrinking? So we're walking around this lake. A lot of times, and I'm brutally honest with him, I would talk about anything. And sometimes it was embarrassing. I mean, we had questions like, have I done anything inappropriate with a woman, even in my mind? That's a tough thing. I mean, those kind of, but we had those kind of conversations. And obviously, anything inappropriate with a woman, we held each other accountable like crazy. But we're walking around this lake, and part of my history was that I was on Christian radio, of all things. I didn't even listen to Christian radio, and Christian radio was kind of a big deal years ago. This is probably 2004. And I get a call from a guy who has the third largest radio company in the world. It's called Salem Communications, actually all over these islands. And he said, would you be willing to go on primetime radio in 5 weeks? We'll give you great, and where all of you live, it would have been on, because I was on 800 stations. And you got to be ready in 5 weeks. And it will be 24 of the top 25 markets in America. 1 million people a day will listen to you. And our board prayed about it and looked at it, and we decided that we would put me on radio. And so it was so hard for me because all of a sudden it's a new thing. I'm not a radio person, and I'm having to interview these people, and people are writing us. I mean, literally 1 million people a day are listening to this crazy program. And I was not probably doing well because I was working way too hard. I was working late at night. I'm prepping shows, doing all this. And John says to me, we go through the same. Is your heart for God growing or shrinking? And I go, I think it's kind of shrinking right now. He goes, why? And I go, because of this radio thing. He said, dude, you may have to get off radio then. Because there's nothing more important than your heart growing for God. And if you're shrinking, you don't want to shrink this thing down and then you become an idiot like some of these other people are. I appreciated that so much. Because everybody else is going, you're amazing. I know, even my wife. It's amazing. We're in front of so many people. You have such a great ministry, blah, blah, blah. And John goes, if your heart keeps shrinking, it's going to get to a place where none of this means anything. And you'll have to get off. And I really loved that with him. It was almost like he was panicked for my heart. And what I'm saying to all of you is, I don't know if you totally understand it at your age. I don't think I would have. But you got to find people who you can be accountable with. Okay? And if you have somebody that you can be totally brutally honest with, I'm going to keep going with some of these questions. What area of my life do I need to change? Again, the question, what's holding me back? Do I have enough replenishing relationships? Do I invest in these relationships? And then these last three are really key, for me anyway. Do I like the person I'm becoming? If you like the person you're becoming, you probably are doing okay. If you're not, then you're probably not doing okay. Here's one, for those of us who are in ministry, is the work of God I'm doing destroying the work of God in me? I don't know if you can understand this at your age yet, but that's the question. That would be the question for Nate. It would be the question for Rick. It would be the question even for some of the RAs. Is the work of God I'm doing destroying the work of God in me? Because sometimes that happens. And then am I giving my family only my emotional scraps? So I'm not going to give you my emotional scraps, but I'll give my wife my emotional scraps, or I'll give my kids my emotional scraps. So those are great questions, if you're kind of thinking about it, okay? Really, really good questions, okay?
What's the last one?
Am I only giving my family my emotional scraps?
One more time.
Am I only giving my family my emotional scraps? That's actually, for me, one of the most important ones. And then the last lesson, lesson 9, says, glorify and enjoy God while serving Him forever. It's actually adapted from something that was written in 1646. So it's called the Westminster Confession. I didn't know anything about the Westminster. When I did grad work at Princeton, I learned about the Westminster Confession. I rapidly forgot. When I went into the cancer thing, the Westminster Confession, which is one of the great confessions of our faith, there's some cool stuff in church history, it's something close to this. I adapted it. So my lesson is spend your life glorifying God, enjoying God, while serving Him forever. And it's really possible to enjoy God. Sometimes we don't. The Bible says, live one day at a time. Jesus said that. And so for me, as I start looking at what am I going to do to you know, glorify God and enjoy Him forever, is I'm going to have to learn this. This has been my prayer. And it's been my prayer for like the last year or so. Teach us the number of days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And so what that says to me is make each day count. And make the most, so treat people more special, treat yourself in a good way more special. Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself, assuming that we would love ourselves in a proper, healthy way. It would also mean straying, not building guardrails so we don't put poisonous stuff into our life. So the whole question for these 2 sessions are, how are you going to build your house, on a rock or on sand? Build a house on sand, it's going to crash just that way. You will see people in your life, like now, you guys are probably too young to see some of it. But like I went to my high school reunion, my 10-year reunion, I'm like, whoa, what happened to some of these people? There are people who crashed. They got involved in drugs, they went after one relationship after another, and they were miserable. Then there are other people who came and said, hey, you know what, you don't know, I became a Christian when I was a junior in high school, and I didn't come from a Christian home. So I was pretty vocal in high school, and people were like, hey, I remember you were a Christian, so I had become a Christian. Those people were doing okay. But it goes back to that scripture. How are you going to build your life? Okay? So anyway, those are just some thoughts on leadership. Yeah?
Just go back to the last slide for just 1 second.
To the last scripture.
Just
Live one day at a time. So that's in the Sermon on the Mount. So Jesus, he gets to a place. That's actually the Living Bible version. But in 634, he says, live one day at a time. And then it goes on, what are we going to worry about? Don't be anxious, because you're going to live one day at a time. That's kind of like the mantra for people who are recovering from addiction, for people who are, doing so many different things. Okay, now you have uno minuto to write down in this one. What would be one of those things, and she can read them. Who's going to read them? Who read them last time? Right there.
Practice positive adaptability, find replenishing relationships, accountability is key, and glorify and enjoy God while serving.
Okay, so choose one of those that might be an important lesson for you. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to get in groups. Why don't you just get in groups of about 3 or 4, because you can kind of, and just kind of turn your chair. So like you 2 be with that 5. I mean, just kind of make a group. And I want you to, so you guys turn around, get with them, maybe make 2 groups. It's easier if it's just like 2 or 3 people, because this is going to be really quick. But I want you to share what was the lesson and why you chose one of those lessons. Okay, so you have 2 to choose from. Okay, and you're going to do this all in about 5 minutes. So you're going to do this fast. Everybody got what you're going to do? Okay, talk amongst yourselves.
in the district that I all much. The one I most importantly was good. One I most importantly was body reflection. Here, like back home, I didn't even really my only close friend is really godly guy. That's okay, but so that, yeah, I'm really gonna be on and then one also is Lawrence said after you fun, I like that because when I was going to marry my girlfriend, but I often felt like to work with me that I do this just like staying in this act, make sure I have known this person before I marry them. Seeing it exactly
Also, I want to add this because I don't know if you can see I don't find but I'm fine that I'm so stressed. Like, and there's things that I'm like, this is bad because I didn't have to fly water. But then I'm like, the fact that like, I use drink my Bible every single day. I use those.
So you should be halfway through at least.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So like, that's like one that you're really resting. So I thought that.
How many of you still need time? Put your hands up. Okay. Just in the back. Okay.
For me, lesson 3, no, can't be bad. We're kind of busy here at Norwood. Every day is busy here.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt it. So if that group's not done, they can finish it. Now, here's what I want to do. And this is going to help me because I'm sure they do this at every meeting for you guys. But I'm going to have each person kind of go, say your name, and tell me what your lesson was, but where you're from too. I'll catch that, then I don't have to keep asking that. Okay? So Tabitha, we'll start with you. We're going to say, so everybody, even all these guys over here. So you're going to say your name, what your lesson was, and where you're from. I'm sorry, Tabitha. You're Tabitha. Cool.
Mika, I'm from Canada, British Columbia, and I chose It's the Pain of Business Letter with Pain of Regrets.
Cool.
I'm Jenny, I'm from Oregon, and I chose Accountability.
Interesting. So,
I also chose accountability as a tool. I'm from Peru and I'm Alejandro.
what's your name?
Alejandro.
Alejandro. ¿Se habla español? Sí. Muy bien.
I'm Wesley, I'm from Minnesota, and I picked 4 finals for that.
You didn't say Minnesota, good. Minnesota.
I get made fun of that all the time.
I'm Haley from Indiana and I chose accountability as well.
I'm Deidre, I'm from North Dakota, and I picked 4 or 5 in the Troy goggles.
Awesome.
I'm Brad. I'm from Washington and I chose family of
It's cool.
I'm Lily from Minnesota, and I chose lesson 3 because I can't do that.
So you're from Minnesota too. So you got 3 from because you're from Minnesota.
Lily in this.
Oh, 4 from Minnesota. 5. Okay.
Minnesota, and I said,
Good. Okay.
I'm Lily, also from Minnesota, and I was the accountability.
Okay. Awesome.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Ben from Minnesota.
That's the Minnesota I know well.
That one came into bed.
Okay. And are you guys all from the? I mean, you're not from the same area. You are.
It was like 2 hours.
Okay. Okay, did you know you all were coming? You just showed up in the
There's a
Minnesota thing?
million.
Okay, I got it. Isn't that funny that you didn't even have to say words? I knew what you said. Okay,
I'm Lena, I'm from Ontario, Canada, and I chose Final Fantasy Village.
okay, awesome. It's neat that you guys have all these different ones. Go ahead.
Cosinado from Arizona, and I also chose Final Fantasy Village.
Okay, awesome.
I'm Paisley from Colorado,
Oh yeah.
and I chose It's the Pain of Discipline and
Okay, good.
I'm Addie, I'm from Northern California, and I do the If the Devil Can't Make You Bad.
I like it. Okay, okay. Plus you got the full, you get the award for the full T-shirt. Of the day. So there, just put a sticker on it. There you go. Okay, see, notice that I changed how we were going. We're going this way now. Okay, so you guys, in the back. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tanner. I'm from Spokane, Washington, and I also did Devil Can't Make You Bad.
Okay, good.
I'm Silas. I'm from Saskatchewan, Canada, and I also did number 3.
Okay, good. Good, good. Okay. Our artist, not the artist, our model,
I'm Emma, I'm from Washington State. And I also did number 3, because I thought that was great.
Okay, cool. Are you guys, do you guys know each other? Because he's,
No.
no, he's,
Yes, we do. We do know each other.
now.
I'm like,
I love this guy. I just want his hair too.
I'm like 45 minutes from Brad.
Okay. Okay, awesome.
I'm Poppy, I'm from Oregon, and I also chose
Number 3, which is
If the Devil
if the devil can't make you bad, it'll make you busy. Okay, yeah. Okay, cut. Yeah, Bucky.
I'm Ian. I'm from Colorado, the best state in the union, and I chose pleasant setting and punishing relationships. Finding the punishing.
Finding your pleasure. Great. Great. We're hitting almost all of them. You're in. Go ahead.
I'm Abigail, I'm from Arizona, and I did It's the Pain of Discipline and
Okay. We had a lot of It's the Pain and Discipline, Pain and Regret.
I'm from Leah, I'm originally from Mexico, and I did
Find and pleasure relationships. We're in Mexico.
Rosarito.
Rosarito. Very cool. Very cool. Maui to Rosarito. There's a story I'm going to ask later. Pain and discipline, pain and regret. Okay. Attitude is everything. That was the first attitude is everything. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Are both of you guys San Diego? Okay.
Isaac. I'm from Washington. My one that I picked was the first one, second from
Wow.
ministry.
Okay.
Because that is a lesson that my dad taught me.
How
I
cool.
have some lessons that my dad has taught me.
Yeah.
And here.
Isn't that interesting? So your dad, and he taught you how to draw. You know, I mean, that's really actually an incredible statement about your dad. Tell him he gets the award. So she gets a word, she gets a word, and then your dad gets the award. Okay, so just tell him. And last but not least,
I'm Allison, I'm from Alaska, and I chose to have serious fun.
have serious fun. That wasn't brought up
A lot
either.
of people don't know.
No, that wasn't brought up either. Yeah, that's cool. Even if I did burn on you for eating a poor moose. Okay, okay, awesome. Well, this has been great. What I'll do in the afternoon, because we got Keith coming in and Debbie, but I'm going to talk about mentoring. So one of the things I want you thinking about is when I asked you ahead of time, I said, how many of you have mentors? Right, put your hands up again. Okay, amazing amount. So I'm going to want to know a little bit about why you would call them a mentor, and then I'm going to teach some biblical principles on what mentoring looks like, because there's some great mentoring in the Bible. Okay? See you in the afternoon. Take a break. I went like till 11, so you might have to give them like 5 more minutes.
5 minutes.
Some of them just stayed here, you know.
So we
So shouts as well.
Oh yeah, sorry. Don't. I have a question. Okay, so guys, can we do a really fast vote because I have a meeting just for a second. So for the Hunger Games that we're doing.